My name is Rachel Donovan, and I'm a 27-year-old sergeant in the United States Army. The morning of the ceremony at Joint Base Charleston was supposed to be the proudest moment of my life. The kind of day you replay in your head when things get hard. The kind of day that proves you were right not to give up. The South Carolina heat sat heavy on the parade ground, thick and wet, pressing against my skin through the stiff fabric of my service uniform. The wool collar scratched my neck. Sweat gathered at my spine. But none of that mattered. Pride anchored me. Solid. Earned. I stood at attention, eyes forward, shoulders squared, listening as the citations echoed across the field. This medal wasn't just metal and ribbon. It was proof. Proof that the girl who grew up learning how to disappear had become someone impossible to ignore. Then my eyes scanned the crowd. Hundreds of faces blurred together. Soldiers. Families. Civilians. Smiling. Applauding. Except for two. My mother, Margaret, sat rigid, her smile stretched thin like glass about to crack. And beside her was Victor Hale, my stepfather. He wasn't clapping. He never clapped for my victories. His gaze locked onto me with that familiar, possessive intensity. The same look that followed me through childhood. The look that said, "Everything you are belongs to me." Cold crept up my spine. The old instinct. The one that warned me something was wrong even when I couldn't explain why. Sergeant Rachel Donovan, the announcer called. For exceptional meritorious service and valor. The words felt unreal. As if they were meant for someone else. A leader forged overseas. A soldier trusted with lives. Not the girl Victor raised, the one he tried to shrink until she fit inside his control. I stepped forward toward the dais. Each measured step felt like a declaration. I escaped you. Or at least, I thought I had. The sound wasn't like combat. It wasn't distant or chaotic. It was sharp. Personal. A single crack that split the air open. Pain exploded through my left hip. White hot. Immediate. My breath vanished. The world lurched sideways. The sky blurred. The grass rushed up to meet me. For one terrifying second, I wanted to fall. I wanted to collapse and become the little girl who learned that silence hurt less than resistance. Then training took over. You don't turn your back. You don't fall unless ordered. Those commands weren't thoughts. They were reflexes carved into bone at Fort Jackson. My vision steadied. I locked my eyes on the American flag snapping in the humid breeze. Screams filled the background, distant and muffled. None of it mattered. The mission was simple. Stand. Blood soaked through the fabric of my uniform, dark and spreading. My legs trembled, but I brought my right hand up anyway. Slow. Precise. A perfect salute. Somewhere beyond the chaos, a photographer lifted his camera. Later, the image would circle the world. A wounded sergeant saluting while bleeding. They'd call it defiance. They'd call it courage. I didn't feel brave. I felt stubborn. General Thomas Whitaker moved before anyone else. He didn't rush. He advanced like a commander reclaiming ground. Secure the shooter, he ordered, his voice cutting through panic like steel. Military police moved instantly. I saw Victor being forced to the ground. Even restrained, his mouth kept moving. She's unstable, he shouted. She's dangerous. I warned you. The edges of my vision darkened as medics knelt beside me. The general crouched, one steady hand on my shoulder. No pity. Only respect. You did your duty, Sergeant, he said calmly. We'll handle the rest. As they lifted me onto the gurney, Victor met my eyes. He expected fear. Collapse. I gave him nothing. The ambulance doors slammed shut. Sirens wailed. And beneath it all, another memory surfaced. The smell of freshly cut grass. Goose Creek, South Carolina. A quiet street near the Naval Weapons Station. A house that looked perfect from the outside. White porch. Swing. Flag by the door. The illusion of safety. Victor entered our lives after my biological father died. He was charming. Respected. The kind of man everyone trusted. Behind closed doors, his charm sharpened into control. He never hit me when others could see. He destroyed things instead. My science fair project. My first dance dress. A diary he read aloud at the dinner table while my mother stared at her plate. The worst part wasn't his cruelty. It was her silence. I learned early that love could be conditional. That survival meant staying small. The army wasn't a career choice. It was an escape route. I ran before sunrise. I trained in secret. I memorized maps. I dreamed of uniforms because they represented something I'd never had. Belonging without ownership. The acceptance letter felt like freedom. Victor laughed when he found out. You'll never really leave, he said. But he was wrong. I woke up in a hospital room hours later. White ceiling. Antiseptic air. Pain radiating from my hip. My uniform hung nearby, cleaned, pressed. Still mine. The war I thought I'd escaped had followed me. But for the first time, it wasn't happening behind closed doors. It was happening in the open. And this time, I wasn't standing alone. If you've ever had someone who was supposed to protect you try to break you instead, hit the like button. If you've ever survived that kind of betrayal, comment with one word, survivor. I thought surviving the gunshot would be the hardest part. I was wrong. The physical pain faded into something manageable. The deeper wound opened the moment the television turned on. I was still in the hospital, drifting in and out of sleep, when my name appeared at the bottom of the screen in bold white letters. The anchor's voice was calm, rehearsed, detached. They called it a family dispute. They said my stepfather was a respected local businessman. They said I was a troubled soldier struggling with combat stress. That second bullet never touched my body. It went straight for my truth. Victor's attorney stood on courthouse steps with cameras pointed at him like weapons. He spoke softly, confidently, painting a picture of a devoted stepfather pushed to the edge by a volatile young woman with PTSD. Experts who had never met me nodded gravely on split screens. Commentators debated my salute as if it were a performance instead of muscle memory forged under fire. I watched my life being rewritten in real time. The worst part wasn't the strangers. It was Goose Creek. Old neighbors appeared on the news, faces I recognized from childhood barbecues and school pickups. They spoke about Victor with warmth. Patience. Sacrifice. One woman said I'd always been difficult. Another suggested I had a look in my eye. I turned the television off and stared at the blank screen. That familiar isolation crept back in. The same feeling I used to get sitting on my bedroom floor after he'd destroyed something I loved, wondering if anyone would ever believe me. A knock came at the door. General Whitaker stepped inside. Not in uniform this time. No medals. Just a man with steady eyes and a paper cup of bad coffee. He told me to stay at ease and pulled up a chair like he had nowhere else he needed to be. He didn't ask about the shooting. He asked about Afghanistan. About my unit. About what leadership meant to me. He listened. Really listened. When I finally admitted that part of me felt ashamed, like I'd somehow caused this, his expression hardened. "You don't carry the shame of cowards," he said. "That belongs to the man who pulled the trigger." Those words landed deeper than any pain medication. Later that day, the narrative shifted. A live press conference interrupted the news cycle. Flags behind the podium. Cameras locked in. General Whitaker stood tall in full dress uniform. He didn't argue. He didn't debate. He stated facts. He called the shooting what it was. An act of violence against a decorated American soldier. He called my salute what it was. Honor. Discipline. Training. He ended with a sentence that echoed through every screen. "We do not abandon our own." The tide turned. Slowly. The trial came faster than I expected. Victor arrived each day dressed like success, hair perfect, posture confident. He smiled at the jury like a man certain the world would bend for him one last time. His lawyer paraded witnesses from my past, all repeating the same script. Difficult child. Troubled teen. Long-suffering stepfather. I sat there and felt 14 again. Powerless. Then the prosecution called my mother. She walked to the stand small and shaking, the same woman who once turned away while I lay on the stairs. My heart pounded so loud I could barely hear the questions. At first, she whispered. She avoided my eyes. I braced myself for silence. But when Victor's attorney crossed the line, something broke open. She lifted her head. "He is not a good man," she said. The courtroom froze. She told them about the science fair project. The dress. The diary. The things he destroyed because he couldn't control them. She admitted her own failure. Her fear. Her cowardice. She didn't excuse it. She owned it. Victor exploded. The mask shattered. Rage poured out of him, raw and undeniable. The jury didn't need persuasion after that. He convicted himself. When General Whitaker took the stand, the room changed again. He spoke with the authority of decades of service. He described the shooting like an incident report. Calm. Exact. Then he spoke about the salute. That was honor in its purest form, he said. No one challenged him. No one could. The verdict came after hours that felt like years. Guilty. The word landed with a quiet finality that loosened something tight in my chest. Victor screamed as they dragged him away, still insisting the world owed him. For the first time, his voice held no power over me. Outside the courthouse, sunlight hit my face and applause rolled like thunder. Veterans stood holding a banner with my name. My mother squeezed my hand, not in fear, but in solidarity. A reporter asked how I felt. I said the only word that mattered. Free. But freedom doesn't mean healed. The weeks after the trial were quiet. Too quiet. Without the fight, the old echoes returned. Victor's voice. The doubts. The question of who I was without resistance to push against. I started therapy. I joined a support group at the VA. I stopped pretending strength meant silence. I learned that healing isn't loud. It's slow. Uneven. Sometimes painful. When Victor wrote me from prison, I didn't answer. I burned my response instead. Silence became my boundary. Recovery took time. Physical therapy hurt. Progress came in inches. But when I returned to my unit, no one saw weakness. They saw a soldier who stayed standing. That's when I realized my story wasn't just mine anymore. I began volunteering. Listening. Creating space for others trapped in the same quiet hell I escaped. With support from leadership, that effort became something bigger. A program. A network. A promise that silence wouldn't be the price of survival anymore. 1 year later, I stood on the same parade ground. Same heat. Same flag. This time, peace replaced dread. General Whitaker pinned a new medal to my chest and told me he was proud. When I saluted, my hand didn't shake. The applause faded faster than I expected. Crowds always do. After the cameras left and the courthouse steps emptied, I returned to a quiet apartment near the base. No reporters. No chants. Just silence. And in that silence, I learned the hardest truth of all. Winning a trial doesn't end a war. It only ends one battle. The scar on my hip healed into a tight red line, a permanent reminder etched into my body. Physical therapy was slow and unforgiving. Some days the pain flared so sharply it stole my breath. Other days it was the memories that hurt more. Trauma doesn't leave when the danger does. It lingers. It waits for quiet moments. Victor's voice didn't disappear with his conviction. It echoed in my head during sleepless nights, whispering the same old lies. You're nothing without the fight. You only exist because I made you strong. I had to learn how to live without an enemy defining me. My relationship with my mother was the hardest terrain to cross. We started with walks along the river, speaking about safe things. Weather. Food. Television shows. Then one afternoon, she stopped and looked at me with tears in her eyes. I failed you, she said. I didn't soften it. I didn't pretend it didn't hurt. Yes, I answered. You did. The truth hung between us, heavy and necessary. Then I added, but you stood up when it mattered most. That's where we begin. Healing isn't forgiveness. It's honesty without cruelty. Therapy became part of my routine. So did the PTSD group at the VA. In that circle of folding chairs and tired faces, I wasn't a headline. I was just Rachel. A sergeant. A survivor learning how to rest without guilt. One night, my mother asked if I'd ever visit Victor in prison. I answered calmly, with a clarity I didn't have before. Forgiveness is internal, I said. Access is earned. That door stays closed. A few weeks later, his letter arrived. 10 pages of blame and venom. No apology. No accountability. I read it once. I felt nothing but pity. Then I burned my reply and locked his words away. Silence became my final boundary. Returning to active duty felt different. My unit didn't treat me like glass. They treated me like one of their own. Stronger for what I'd survived. My scar stopped feeling like something to hide. It became proof that I stayed standing. That's when I understood something important. My story didn't end with survival. It began with responsibility. I started volunteering at a shelter for military families. Listening to stories that mirrored my own. Stories of strength swallowed by silence. With leadership support, that effort grew into something real. A peer-led network. Confidential. Judgment-free. A promise that no soldier would have to fight an invisible war alone. We called it Silent Comrade. 1 year after the shooting, I stood once more on the parade ground at Joint Base Charleston. Same sun. Same heat. This time, no fear. General Whitaker was retiring, and this was one of his final ceremonies. As he pinned the medal to my chest, he leaned in. "Your father would be proud," he said. "So am I." I saluted. Steady. Certain. When I spoke, I didn't talk about the bullet. I talked about the scar. "Scars aren't endings," I said. "They're commas. Places where stronger stories begin." The crowd stood. Applause rolled across the field. My mother smiled, truly smiled, for the first time in years. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt whole. If you're watching this and you've ever survived something that tried to erase you, know this. Your strength didn't come from the pain. It came from what you chose to build afterward. Thank you for staying with my story. If it resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories of survival, resilience, and hope. And before you go, leave one word in the comments that represents the strength you found when everything tried to take it from you.